What's going on, YouTube world? My name is Jason, aka Mr. Llama, the not-so-better half of the Lazy Llamas, which is the eBay store that I run with my wife, Mrs. Llama. And today we're going to be talking about receiving negative feedback as a seller on eBay and how to handle it. While receiving negative feedback should be very rare, it does happen, and how you deal with it is very important.
Sounds important.
It's very, very important.
Let's get into the video. How do you deal with negative feedback? Depending on personality, negative feedback can be handled in a variety of ways, with a multitude of outcomes, some negative, some positive. The good news is that eBay, it's a lot simpler than that. There's really only 3 ways to deal with negative feedback, and only one of these ways has the possibility of resulting in a positive outcome. Let's get started.
Okay, you guys ready for this?
I'm ready.
Way number 1, ignore it. Now, while this might be good advice in real life, on eBay, this is not the way to go. You always want to acknowledge negative feedback when it's received. There are definitely some proactive steps you can take once you've received negative feedback. Don't ignore it. Now we're going to go into the second way that you can handle negative feedback on eBay, and that is to get angry. Now, while this might be a natural reaction, especially if you feel like the negative feedback was unwarranted and the buyer's being unreasonable and just being mean-spirited.
That's just mean.
But getting angry can lead you to make very bad decisions, like trying to retaliate against the buyer. Things like reporting the buyer to eBay, even though the buyer technically didn't do anything against eBay policy. Or sending the buyer a rude and disrespectful message, letting them know exactly what you're thinking. I know you want to. I know it's very natural to want to do these things, especially, like I said, when the buyer has done something mean-spirited towards you. The natural human reaction is to retaliate. But the good news is you can walk away from the computer and take a deep breath. The buyer's not there in the room with you. You've seen the negative feedback. Your face is red. Your blood's boiling. You can always just walk away from the computer.
Let's walk away. Just walk away.
And compose yourself. Because now we're going to go into way number 3 of handling negative feedback on eBay. And that is to respond and deal with it in a courteous manner.
Try to be professional.
Now, the way you handle it and respond to it will vary based on whether you think that it is warranted or unwarranted. If you believe it is warranted, like say, for instance, you got sick and you had a late shipment go out, which means you didn't mail it on the day that you were supposed to. And the buyer leaves negative feedback because the item came in late. Technically, the buyer is correct in that the item was received late. Now, how you would deal with this is that you would leave a direct reply to the negative feedback. To the right-hand side of the feedback, there is a button that says reply, and it opens a text box, and you can reply directly to the negative feedback. And what you will say is, first, you will apologize. You will acknowledge the error that occurred. You can explain why. You can tell the buyer that you had been sick, and this is normally not how you do business, and you hope that the buyer won't hesitate to do business with you in the future. Something to that effect. And you leave that reply on that negative feedback, because when potential buyers do check your feedback and they see the negative review and then they see your response, and overall you do have a very good seller rating, because I'm guessing if you're watching this, you want to be a good seller.
I want to be good.
So most likely you have a lot of good feedback, or you're going to have a lot of good feedback because you're going to be a good seller, but mistakes do happen and there is warranted negative feedback. I've been selling on eBay for 3 years, and I have received 2 negative feedbacks that were warranted. I think I've received 6 negative feedbacks in the entire 3 years. 4 were unwarranted, and 2 were warranted. And the ones that were warranted, I explained my position and what had happened. I apologized, and that was it. And so the negative feedbacks are still there, but my replies are there, and overall I have over a 99% positive feedback. So people who come in and look at the negative reviews, they see these 2 reviews and my responses to them, apologizing and saying that's not how I do business. And so that makes you look a little better. So the negative feedbacks aren't as bad once you have your reply to them, especially if you reply in a courteous manner. And we're not going to revert back to way number 2 and getting angry. Angry. And leaving an angry reply. That's not a good idea. Don't try to bargain with the buyer to try to get the feedback removed. Don't say, hey, I'll give you a refund if you remove this. But if you feel a refund is warranted, then send the refund and then message the buyer and say, hey, keep the item. I've sent you a refund. This was totally my fault.
My bad.
Hopefully, maybe you can find it in your heart to revise this. You can actually click a button on the right that says revise, and you can request that a buyer revise their negative feedback if you feel like you've gone above and beyond to try to satisfy the buyer. That is something you can request. Now, if you feel the negative feedback is unwarranted, you still reply. You still leave a defense of yourself in a courteous manner. Don't do it in a rude way. You want potential buyers who are checking your reviews to see your response and that you're a courteous buyer and that this is not normally how business is done, or seeing a good defense of yourself. For instance, I got a recent negative feedback that was unwarranted, but I left a very nice response. The buyer that bought a video game, and they just left negative feedback that says, game didn't work. That's all they said. They never contacted me. They never reached out with a message.
So rude.
They never opened a return, and I offer free returns on all games that I sell. I test every game. So the game worked before I shipped it out. I'm not saying that they're lying. I'm just saying that the game worked, and that I offer free returns. All they had to do was open a return case and send it back. They never gave me an opportunity to make it right. They just left negative feedback that said game doesn't work. So I left a nice response saying, I'm very sorry that you had an issue with the game. If I offer free returns, if you want to open a return case, I'll be happy to refund your money if you want to return the item. I put that in the reply that I guarantee every game that I sell, because I do offer a 30-day money-back guarantee, free returns on every game that I sell. So potential buyers looking at my reviews will say, hey, this guy offers free returns guaranteed on his games. This is somebody I can trust and I can buy from.
A certain trustworthy quality.
You can even have eBay remove negative feedback in certain cases, and we'll get into that here in just a minute. But first, if you're enjoying this video, make sure you hit that like button and hit that notification bell so you can see when we post future videos. Now let's get back to it. Now, in closing, we're going to talk about negative feedback that I received recently. I actually received 2 negative feedbacks recently within the last month.
Oh my God.
The first one was the one I just told you about, where the buyer just left, game doesn't work. Never contacted me, never opened a return. In this case, I actually had the feedback removed. I went ahead and replied right away when I saw it, so that any potential buyers would see my reply that I offer free returns. This is against eBay policy. If I offer a way for the buyer to be satisfied by returning the item for free, no charge to them, for a full refund, and they never give me the opportunity to do that, they can't leave negative feedback, because it could have been a positive experience. They can't just simply hurt a seller's reputation without giving the seller any opportunity to fix the situation. So that feedback is gone.
So it's like it never happened.
A second case, and this was a good one.
Get it together, man.
The buyer sent me a message. It was extremely rude, demanding a refund right off the bat. This was for a Keurig coffee maker that I had sold. It had been weeks since I had shipped this out, and it was an international sale. It had gone somewhere overseas. And he sent me a very rude message saying that it doesn't work, it's disgusting, and he wants a refund. So, first of all, that's how you deal with people is going to determine how they deal with you.
So remember, live by the good old golden rule.
Now, I wasn't rude in my response. I just let them know that I had no issues with it when I tested it myself. I cleaned it myself. If it's not working, you are more than welcome to return it, and I'll refund your money, because, again, I offer returns. He wanted me to send him a shipping label, and because it's overseas, that shipping label was going to be like $90. And I said, no, I'm not doing that. I said, if you want to return it, you can, And I'm going to put the messages here on the screen so you can read. But he said that I ripped him off and he was being very rude. And so I was in no way, shape, or form in the mood to do anything above and beyond to satisfy this customer. I wasn't paying $90 for a return shipping label. At this point, I'm not just going to refund their money, because at this point, I don't know if this is a scammer or what's going on, because I know this was a perfectly good working coffee maker when I sent it to him. And so he actually, in the message, if you look, I'm going to try to circle it when I put it up on the screen, threatened a negative review in the message. And buyers do this. It's called like negative feedback ransom, or hostage, taking you hostage with negative feedback, something along those lines. And they'll try to scare you into thinking you're going to get negative feedback, and so you'll do what they want. This is against eBay policy. Buyers are not allowed to do this. Now, some of them can be pretty sneaky about how they work it in there. They won't usually just overtly say, I'm going to give you negative feedback if you don't refund my money, because most buyers know that they're not allowed to do that. So he may have probably known this policy, which is why he worded it the way he did. But he did say negative review in the message. And they do this trying to scare you to do what they want. Don't do it. Don't allow buyers to bully you.
But I won't give a Valentine to a bully.
And so I reported the messages immediately to eBay. And this wasn't done in anger, so I'm not going back to way number 2 and responding in anger. No, he had violated eBay policy with the way he had spoken to me and with putting a threat of negative review in the message. So I reported the messages, which is completely okay. If somebody is threatening you or being rude, overly rude to you in a message, report them to eBay, because these buyers need to be handled and dealt with by eBay.
Prepare to be punished.
And I even put in my report that the buyer had threatened negative feedback, and if they do leave negative feedback, I want it removed. And lo and behold, the next morning, I wake up to negative feedback from this buyer. But I replied, in a very courteous way. So until the feedback was removed, any potential buyer would see my side of the story. It's very important for buyers to see your side of the story. So always leave replies, even if you're going to try to have it removed, because sometimes it can take several days to have it removed. In this case, it took almost 2 weeks. I don't know why, but it took a couple of phone calls to eBay to finally get them to take action on this. But you can have them removed, but don't wait until they're removed. You can reply so that they're not sitting there without a response for, a few days or a week, possibly a little more, until they're removed. I know it's a big joke that buyers always win and eBay hates their sellers. This is not true. They do side with buyers. I would say 60-40 over sellers. But in certain cases, the seller wins. And if this case was black and white, cut and dry, the buyer was out of line, and their feedback was removed, and they were successfully reported for their conduct. So you do have rights. Don't get bullied. Fight back. Ready? Fight! In a courteous way. And you can have negative feedback removed, or in the very least, allow potential buyers to see your side of the story and can see that you're a courteous seller that cares about their buyers and wants to make things right. So we're going to end the video there. Just hit buttons down there. The like button's a good one. The subscribe button, that one helps us out too. And in case you don't know, God loves you, I love you, and we'll see you next time. Peace.